Nytheris, the forest of memory and mist, also called the Blooming Labyrinth, the Root-Hung Vale, and among outsiders, the Mournwood Dream. From the Killer and Keeper universe. Overview. Nytheris is not merely a forest. It is an ossuary of moments. A verdant reliquary where chronology festers, melts, and reconstitutes itself in the resin-scented exhalations of immortal boughs. Echoes slither backward and forward through the air, like serpents of syllables devouring their own tails. Footfalls dissolve not only into moss but into memory's marrow. With each step, travelers are digested by the past. Some awaken to lullabies born of unborn centuries, while others gag on the metallic tang of voices extinguished in unrecorded wars. The air bleeds perfumes of wilted summers and petrified springtimes, its every draft heavy with the rustle of unreaped grief. Birds cry in reversed echoes, laughter unfurls like torn vellum, and even silence drips with foreknowledge. A stifled dirge anticipating wounds yet to weep. Here, roots clutch memory like bone, and trees whisper names they have not yet learned to mourn. Time folds in strange patterns beneath its violet canopy, and travelers often lose moments, days, or even decades in its mist. Legends say the dying breath of a druid queen fused with its roots, birthing a sentient forest that watches all who walk its soil. At its core, Nytheris is a kingdom without walls, defended not by stone but by the wills of ancient glades and oath-bound blood. Its heartbeats are measured in centuries, and its governance is as much ritual as rule. Floating citadels drift like dreams above the boughs, tethered to the forest by magical anchors that pulse with forgotten vows. Each court, each caste, is entwined in a web of oaths, bloodline, and the unspoken debt owed to the land itself. The kingdom is divided into distinct regions, each with its own guardians and ceremonial importance. The Valegrove Reach, home to the ethereal Whisper-Moth sanctuaries and the dream-cloaked pollen markets. Valegrove Reach is the spiritual seat of the Dayglow Circle, a realm where devotion and hallucination coalesce. Bioluminescent glades pulse with ancestral breath, and root bridges whisper forgotten lullabies beneath every footfall. Here, trees bloom with memory-laced petals, whose perfume induces visions of lives unlived. Nestled among the violet boughs lie cloistered prayer blossoms and groves tended by dream wardens, their chants seeding the air with calm delirium. Wandering the periphery are veil chasers, pixie and fairy hunters who have turned from courtly life to dwell in the forest's raw embrace. Known as thorn strays, they live in vine hollows and sap-cradled shelters, guided by primal instinct rather than law. Their arrows are carved from thornbone, their cloaks stitched from Whisper-Moth silk, and their allegiance lies not with crowns, but with canopy. To them, the forest is not a dominion to be ruled, but a deity to be followed, cryptic, cruel, and eternally watching. Thornmere Bastion, a dense, root-choked labyrinth, veined with ancient mycelial sigils, and overhung by canopies so thick they birth permanent dusk. It houses the cryptic Thornbound archives, vaults of spell scrolls etched in bark and bone, and the infamous battle gardens, where incantations are cultivated from sacrificial soil, tended by oath-bound hordocrats who bleed memories into the roots to coax out war blooms. Veins of glimmering sap etch the walkways, pulsing with arcane intent. Hidden beneath its roots, the pale-wrought cenacle whispers with buried spells, and ghost thorns sway even without wind. rumored to be grown from the blood of ancient duelists, whose oaths still echo among the ivy-shrouded colonnades. The Starball Cradle. A constellation of verdant islets, suspended high above Nytheris' canopy, tethered together by iridescent roots pulsing with arcane lifeblood. These floating arboreal sanctuaries are inhabited by mystics, dream anchors, and time-bound chroniclers, whose minds drift between lucid vision and haunted memory. The air trembles with soft hymns of sky-bloom petals, and barges carved from glade glass drift between aisles like thoughts across the sleeping mind. Here, dreams are archived in ether crypts and harvested in coils of moonvine, and the cradle's mystics speak in tongues older than dawn, mapping constellations long since forgotten by the stars themselves. The Hollow Shade, a morass of vapor and remembrance. The hollow shade festers in the heart of Nytheris like a wound that refuses to close. Perpetually drowned in an iridescent mist, the very air here hums with spectral memory, thick with the scent of myrrh, rust, and ancient sorrow. Veilshades are said to have birthed themselves from the fog, splitting from the breath of trespassers who lost their names to the forest. The land pulses with malformed flora, bloomless vines that slither without light, trees whose branches pierce the ground like inverted roots, and mushrooms that murmur lullabies in extinct dialects. Shifting paths flicker in and out of phase, revealing glimpses of altars built from bone-sapped stalagmites and grove temples where silence is enforced by cursed pollen. Here, even time rots sideways. No map dares to define its shape. Only scars do, and even they forget themselves. Alliances remain fragile. The Dayglow hold nominal diplomatic ties with several sky realms, though strained by ideological drift and trade disputes. Thornbound emissaries maintain pacts with necrosymbiotic enclaves outside the forest, bartering fungal knowledge for relics of ancient bloodlines. Internal power plays bubble beneath every moonlit convening, assassinations veiled in bloom duels, prophecies weaponized in court disputes, and divine portents spun to justify betrayal. Shrines etched into petrified stumps, cradle ever-burning blossoms, ghostly flora, whose flickering luminescence feeds on offerings of breath and unvoiced remorse. Their flames, fragile and unyielding, are nourished not by kindling, but by the hush of ancestral reverence and the blood-wrought vows whispered through cloven bark. Here, the kingdom's dominion is not heralded in fanfare, but insinuated in subtler terror. A shiver in the moss's underdream, a susurrus in the canopy that tastes of gravewood incense, a temporal ripple that brushes against bone-deep instinct and bleeds into the marrow of trespassers. Even the stars above Nytheris appear to shift course when watched too long. To outsiders, the kingdom is a myth wrapped in fog and memory. To its own, it is both cradle and crucible, a place where history does not pass, but lingers, waits, and judges anew. Valegrove Reach, the Whispering Debt. A rare pollen blight weeps through the whisper sanctuaries, its glow cysts mutating into sigils not spoken since the Root Murmur War. Dayglow apothecaries suspect sabotage, a thornbound spore ritual gone awry, or perhaps a Whisper-Moth infected with prophetic delirium. The region seethes with unease, its markets shrouded in pollen haze and unspoken dread. Thornmere Bastion, the bloom dual pact. From blood-enriched soil, crimson lilies bloom that drink the oaths of the duelists. A rising warlord among the Thornbound calls for revival of the Thornmire Oath, a sacred pact sealed in petals and pain. Amid spell-woven flora, contenders clash under moonfire, while the vines themselves judge worth and cowardice with binding blooms and lethal strangle roots. Starbow Cradle, the sky that forgot. One of the skyborn citadels drifts anchorless, its mystics speaking only in forgotten dreams and astral screams. The tethers that hold its islands quake with spectral tension. As its orbit destabilizes, a rift opens, threatening to unravel not only the cradle, but the chronomagics that anchor memory itself. The Hollow Shade, the Morning Root. A Veilshade elder long silent, now utters names of the living in the death tongue. Its cries warp the mists into screaming faces. Factions dispatch shadow duelists to silence the prophecy, but each fails, vanishing with only their echo left to mourn them. Within the hollow, the trees lean in, not to listen, but to remember. And remembrance in Nytheris is never merciful. Society and culture. Nytheris thrives not only on its rituals and lineage, but through a network of enigmatic industries woven seamlessly into its living landscape. Among its most vital trades are the harvesting of lunar pollen, processed into dream dyes and spell ink. The cultivation of whisper silk, woven in hidden groves by artisan castes, using looms animated by chant and moonlight. And the forging of glade glass, a crystalline material that sings under pressure and serves as both communication medium and weapon component. Enchanted pollen is bartered in ritual markets veiled in glamours, with offerings made in incense and memory. At the crown of its dual monarchy stand two potent symbols of the realm's divide. Queen Lumindra of the Silver Bow, a fey sovereign renowned for her gentle command and grace-bound wisdom. Beloved by the Dayglow and many among the artisan caste, she listens to the wind's counsel and governs through mercy wrapped in moonlight. Her crown is a circlet of blooming petals, each one a vow kept. King Veros Blackgleam, ruler of the Pixiekin, is her equal in title, if not in temperament. Cunning, paranoid, and perpetually suspicious of betrayal, he rules the Thornbound's political labyrinth with sharp wit and a sharper tongue. Known for searing decrees and clandestine maneuvers, he wears a crown carved from obsidian thistle, always freshly oozing sap. The queen and king, though allied by realm and law, rule in constant tension, each balancing the other's vision with their own. Queen Lumindra, born of the Moonthorn lineage, was once a war orchid priestess who quelled the Weeping Glen revolt with words alone, weaving peace through whispered prophecy. Her decisions are etched into dreamstone tablets that flower only under eclipse. She is said to dream in languages long dead, consulting ancient petals in silence before speaking laws that ripple through the realm like moonlight over still water. King Veros, once the youngest Thornmire duelist to ever win the Blood Petal Gauntlet, rose from obscurity by unraveling a courtly coup using a network of glamored insects. His paranoia is not without cause. Several assassination attempts have failed only because of his preemptive strike doctrine and affinity for memory-scouring drafts. Though mistrusted by many, his genius in redirecting magical warfare and court manipulation has prevented at least 3 civil wars from erupting. Together, their reign is one of uneasy balance. Lumindra fostering spiritual continuity and enchanted diplomacy, while Veros forges tactical supremacy through espionage, fungal weaponry, and brutal contingency planning. Their influence seeps into every war council and ritual forge. Their shadows fall long across the heartwood of Nytheris. Their heir, Prince Thistlewyn, known as the Bloombound heir, is a paradox in flesh. Calm as his mother, cunning as his father. Raised beneath moon-blessed petals and thistle-thorn tutors, he walks between the courts, masking his ambitions behind riddles and serene smiles. Rumors whisper he communes with the Veilshades, trading secrets in the language of the lost. Queen Lumindra's trusted advisor, Mistress Oriel of the Silver Veil, is a high chronicler and dream mason whose petal-bound tomes contain not only law, but prophecy. She is said to bind whispers into ink. La Seed, Lav Far, La. King Varos' chief confidant is Spindle Regent Harkle, a former Nightthorn who was exiled, then pardoned, after orchestrating a false flag rebellion that unified the Thornbound under Varos' banner. Among their most storied intrigues, each rippling through the realm like echoing dirges. Lumindra's brokered truce of the Bleeding Grove did not merely suspend bloodshed. It unleashed years of civil mourning. The artisan caste, stripped of seasonal bloom, spiraled into unrest. Guilds fractured, and the Moondyer's revolt left 3 sanctuaries gutted, their dyes seeping into roots that still weep colorless petals. Varos' hallucinogenic moth ploy sparked a cascade of retribution from the Dayglow elite. Not only were 5 traitors exposed, but an entire generation of Conclave successors was rendered unfit due to mental affliction, leading to a silent schism within the sky-aligned court. The rift persists, codified only in altered dream rituals and the sanctioned exile of 5 noble lines. These gambits reshape power. They cost faith, birthed legends, and bred new enemies within velvet shadows. Every petal dropped in court bears the weight of consequence. Every whisper now may as well be a blade. Beneath their thrones the forest listens, weighing every secret and ambition against the roots of its oldest vows. Nytheris is home to an eclectic population beyond its ruling courts. The primary inhabitants, fairy and pixie kin, govern and shape much of the land's culture and arcane traditions. However, the realm also shelters Root-Woken Dryads, ancient spirits bound to tree trunks, whispering justice in forgotten dialects. Stonebark golems, animated forest guardians who serve in silence and slumber in moss-covered crypts. Whisper-Moths, spectral pollinators that drift through memory paths, carrying dreams between minds. Veilshades, lost wanderers twisted into ethereal wraiths, lingering in glades where time frays. Each of these beings plays a role in the forest's ecosystem and political mystique. Root-Woken Dryads act as living arbiters in disputes involving forest law. While neutral in court politics, they lean toward Thornbound sympathies due to shared reverence for ancestral soil magic. Stonebark golems serve as dormant sentinels, activated only during times of great peril. The Dayglow Circle considers them archaic tools, while the Thornbound hold ceremonies to commune with their slumbering spirits. Whisper-Moths are used by both courts as silent couriers and dream spies. Each faction accuses the other of twisting the moth's dream paths for psychological manipulation. Veilshades remain unaligned but deeply feared. Their presence near sacred glades is considered a harbinger of prophetic upheaval. Chroniclers interpret their movements as omens, often triggering political maneuvers within both factions. These beings coexist within a ceremonial hierarchy that reveres magical lineage, with the Dayglow and Thornbound courts shaping all spiritual and civic order. Nytheris is governed by 2 competing Fey courts. The Dayglow Circle seeks celestial unity, aligning with floating citadels and sky magic. The Thornbound anchor themselves to ancient buried sorcery and blood-forged covenants. The society is deeply ceremonial, with caste structures based on magical lineage. Chroniclers use petal-bound tomes that bloom only in moonlight. Artisan castes craft enchanted pollen and spell-woven silks in hidden groves. Markets are cloaked in glamours, and trade is conducted with ritual silence. Military forces of Nytheris. Grand Thorn Spear Calvarex. At the pinnacle of Nytheris' martial hierarchy stands Calvarex, Grand Thorn Spear of the Forest Host, an ancient Fey veteran whose antlered helm was wrought from the bones of the first war god slain by pixie kind. Calvarex is the only known living commander to have survived the wrath of Atlas during the Storm Reckoning. His left side bears the bloom scar of divine lightning, a mark that bleeds silver sap when he speaks oaths of war. As both tactician and relic binder, Calvarex coordinates the Skyguard, Nightthorn blades and root-clad sentinels in ritual concordance. His voice alone can still trees mid-breath, and his command is unquestioned, sacred and grimly absolute. Once a root duelist of the Thornbound, Calvarex earned his title not through lineage, but through the Ash Trials, a forbidden rite beneath the obsidian bloom, where he outwitted 5 ancestral spirits and drank venom from a dreaming god. In his youth, he led the defense of the Cradle Grove against the Iron Host raiders, single-handedly breaking their siege with a ritual that turned the trees against their riders, binding them in wooden thrones that still bleed. After Atlas's storm obliterated the Veilstone Bastion, Calvarex walked from the wreckage carrying 7 wounded and a shard of skyfire embedded in his ribs. He refused magical healing, claiming, "Pain is a banner that discipline salutes." In the centuries since, his council has quelled 4 uprisings, reformed the blood oath systems between castes, and ensured that no military path in Nytheris rises without reckoning its cost in spirit and sacrifice. Grand Thorn Spear of the Forest Host, an ancient Fey veteran whose antlered helm was wrought from the bones of the first war god slain by pixie kind. Calvarex is the only known living commander to have survived the wrath of Atlas during the Storm Reckoning. His left side bears the bloom scar of divine lightning, a mark that bleeds silver sap when he speaks oaths of war. As both tactician and relic binder, Calvarex coordinates the Skyguard, Nightthorn blades, and root-clad sentinels in ritual concordance. His voice alone can still trees mid-breath, and his command is unquestioned, sacred, and grimly absolute. The Skyguard Tudios, led by High Warden Sarathiel, bearer of the Twilight Halo. The Skyguard are more than soldiers. They are liturgical instruments of judgment. Sarathiel once turned back a celestial incursion by sacrificing his memory in exchange for divine fire. Another renowned figure, Shieldkeeper Veilith, was martyred in the War of the Withered Crown, invoking the rite of sundering light to destroy a thorn-bound siege. Each Skyguard wields a stormblade forged in skyfire, their tactics combining aerial strikes with celestial bombardment from the floating citadels above. Forged from iron bark, sanctified in the breath of dying stars, the Skyguard are more than soldiers. They are liturgical instruments of judgment. Trained in the floating citadels above the violet canopy, they descend only when summoned by royal decree or prophetic unrest. Their armor, inscribed with aeonic wards, glows softly with celestial flame. Each carries a stormblade, tempered in skyfire, capable of cleaving through spectral and corporeal alike. In the War of the Withered Crown, a single Skyguard company held back a Thornbound insurgency for 7 nights beneath the moaning archway, their commander expiring only after invoking the rite of sundering light, a self-sacrifice that scorched 100 treetop watchposts into ash. Nightthorn blades, commanded by Mistress Sicarel of the Hollow Gloom, whose venom songs can kill across dimensions. The Nightthorn blades are feared throughout the canopy. Legendary assassin, Rilthea the Petal Dagger, slew an entire conclave during the Black Spiral Petal by orchestrating a moonlight masquerade turned massacre. Masters of illusion, these assassins deploy blood pollen clouds and glass thorn darts to confuse and dismantle their targets with surgical cruelty. These pixie assassins embody the shadows between heartbeats. Their training is brutal, surviving a venom trial that kills 2/3 of initiates, then mastering illusion veils cast with blood pollen and whispering glass. Often deployed in covert purges during civil unease, they are ghost-like, striking in bloom courts and moonlit sanctuaries with poisoned petals and memory-splicing blades. In the event known as the Black Spiral Petal, they eliminated 14 traitor princes during a single dusk ceremony, leaving only silvered cicada husks in their place. Root-clad Sentinels, directed by Root Marshal Olgarn of the Deep Mycelium, who communes with fungal spirits older than written magic. He once routed an Ironborn legion using only spores and ancestral sorrow. Famed Sentinel Vern Mossneal is said to have absorbed the memories of over 200 fallen kin, turning his very flesh into a haunted hive of forest will. These troops employ mycelial warfare, growing living barricades and performing fungal bond combat rituals. These are the bulwark, the fungal phalanx. Grown as much as trained, they root themselves nightly into the soil, to commune with the forest's oldest dreams. Their weapons, sprouted from twisted bonewood and bled sap crystals, are imbued with binding rites, capable of paralyzing intruders with ancestral sorrow. In the siege of the Thistle Spires, they held a 5-mile perimeter for 3 months without resupply, encasing their dead into the living ramparts so the roots could repurpose them into battle-bound effigies. Guardianship Doctrine. Nytheris guards its borders with preternatural precision. Trespassers do not merely vanish. They are forgotten. Moss reclaims footprints, trees lean to mislead, and memories rot on the wind. Every glade, every vine is an extension of its will. Military units operate under the doctrine of breathless war. Never speak, never warn, never forgive. Even allied forces require ritual clearance through arcane seals and pollen bloom rites lest they be mistaken for defilers. Violators are subjected to the rite of withering silence, a grotesque unmaking where their voices are unraveled by whispering roots that crawl into their throats like invasive ivy, memories siphoned into iridescent fungal spores that giggle with stolen joy, and names ground to pollen dust within the gnarled bark of the witness trees, which weep amber ichor in mourning. Their bones, warped into sigils of exile and despair, are hung from gallows-grown boughs in groves, smothered by silence so absolute that sound itself recoils. Each grove births a single crimson bloom, fed on the violator's last breath, blooming only when the stars weep. No tombs are made for them, only absence shaped into sacred vacancies, hollowed echoes where their souls once dared to sing. The forest does not punish in anger, but in permanence. Trespassers do not merely vanish. They are forgotten. Moss reclaims footprints. Trees lean to mislead, and memories rot on the wind. Military units operate under the doctrine of breathless war. Never speak, never warn, never forgive. Even allied forces require ritual clearance through arcane seals and pollen bloom rites, lest they be mistaken for defilers. Mystical features. Nytheris is a fever dream of nature's extremities, a cathedral of delirium swathed in baroque decay and vegetal menace. Its topographies convulse through kaleidoscopic aberrations, boglands that chant in chitinous choirs, obsidian-barked stonewoods veined like shattered mirrors, and velvet-mossed hollows where titanic, sighing roots pulse with half-buried breath. Brine lakes unshaken by wind glisten like divining mirrors, capturing constellations long since fallen from the firmament. Above, the canopies coil into knotwork so dense they extinguish the sun, weaving a penumbra that murmurs with ancestral warnings. The air is an opiate fugue of rot and bloom, a perfume of petrified springtimes mingled with the musk of restless ghosts. Its wildlife ranges from the eerie to the sublime, blooming across Nytheris, in unsettling harmony with the land's twisted beauty. Among the most revered and feared are the glass-thorn stags, whose translucent antlers refract stray magic into haunting illusions, and whose presence draws clouds of bioluminescent spores. The mire-crested Volk, serpentine leviathans draped in algae and shrine-like growths, whose breath steams with swamp incense. And the crimson blightwings, moths of monstrous span that siphon dreams and flake memories into iridescent powder. Above, witch crows wheel with funereal grace, their many eyes glistening with mimicked voices of the long dead. Yet the list continues. Shimmer-fanged orlings, small but ravenous beasts with venom that turns blood into phosphorescent mist. Hollow-hoof nightmanes, ghostly equines that gallop across treetops and vanish at dawn, leaving only hoofprints of ash. And verdant skulkers, predatory flora that imitate the cries of lost children to lure prey. The forest is alive not merely in breath, but in deception. Within this realm also dwell those kin who reject the kingdom's ceremonial life. Pixie and fairy hunters, edgewalkers who shun courtly veils in favor of the primal dance of hunt and hearth. They live amidst the gnarled wilds, building their homes within hollow boughs and vine-sheltered hollows. These wild bloods forge arrows from thornbone, sleep beneath rootlight, and drink sap wine fermented in bark cradles. They track with leaf whisper and shadow scent, whispering oaths to the old winds. Known as the thorn strays, they believe the forest itself is a parent, and the courts its wayward children. Fiercely independent, their knowledge of Nytheris' pulse is unmatched. It is said they can find a single footstep days after it was laid, or stalk through memory paths without losing their time. They trade with Urnbear kin in secrecy, exchanging hunted meat and bone carvings for calming Kaltar leaves. Though distrusted by both Dayglow and Thornbound alike, they are sometimes summoned in times of crisis, for no one knows how to kill what should not live, or navigate what cannot be mapped, quite like the thorn strays. Tucked deep within the folds of the hollow shade is a small enclave known as Urnborough, a village of reclusive Urnbear kin warriors, home to the Urnbear, a race of small but immensely strong beings, part dwarf, part beast. Legend tells that they were shaped by the mountain god Orun and the forest spirit Katha, revered not as active deities but as ancestral forces, symbolic patrons, whose traits are embodied rather than worshipped. The Urnbear themselves were born of stone and soil, fur and flame, when the world was still raw with magic. Orun gave them strength and bone, Katha gave them laughter and the scent of pine. In their youth, Urnbear resemble stout, thick-limbed humans, with slightly bestial features. Broad noses, heavy brows, and a light down of fur that thickens with age. Their bodies are compact powerhouses of muscle and bone, covered in coarse fur ranging from deep rust to ashen gray. Cultural adornments are woven into this fur. River stones for resilience, tree sap beads for memory, each braid telling part of an Urnbear's story and lineage. Their shoulders slope with age-earned dignity, and their thick necks carry the crested tattoos of clan loyalty. Their hands are thick-knuckled and claw-nailed, ideal for climbing, carving, and combat alike. As they grow older, their features become more ursine. Noses flatten, jawlines broaden, fur deepens, and their voices descend into rumbling growls. The eldest are said to resemble walking bears with the gaze of old sages, and their strength grows even as their gait slows, capable of splitting stones with bare fists. Faces are round, with broad cheekbones, thick brows, and beards braided into runic loops. often dusted with ash or pine pollen from ritual fires. Some wear carved wooden plugs in their ears, or bone-pierced septums as marks of rite. Their eyes, amber, green, or the rare glacier blue, gleam with curiosity and ancestral pride, the whites flecked with hints of gold. To this day, each clan sings of their origin at solstice fires, believing their ancestors' breath still lingers in the winds through the high branches. Their eyes are sharp, their culture proud, their laughter booming and frequent, despite their size. They live as hermits among the petrified bones of titanic beasts, cultivating and smoking kaltar leaves, a sacred herb revered not only for its tranquilizing properties, but as a conduit to ancestral memory. Agricultural rites among the Urn Bear are deeply ceremonial. Soil is consecrated with ash from solstice pyres. Moon-fed irrigation channels are traced along forgotten ley lines, and dusk chants echo through their groves, carrying verses layered with ancestral lament and joy. At dawn, only after the forest hushes in reverence, the leaves are plucked with knives carved from dreamwood, their edges honed by generations of grief and tempered patience. Dried in cavern smokehouses infused with sap resin and pine fog, the kaltar is rolled into ember leaves. Inhaling this smoke is not mere indulgence, but a ritual of passage, a mingling of pain, memory, and bittersweet solace. The herb soothes trauma, but also unearths it, revealing paths within the soul long forgotten. Trade with Nytheris takes place beneath dream vines in silent ceremony. Kaltar bundles are exchanged for whisper silk, pollen balm, or memory glass, and each transaction is sealed with a trace burn sigil, a mark binding trader and bearer to mutual secrecy and ancestral respect. The smoke curls with euphoric clarity, laced with pine, resin, and the cool ghost of ash, granting warriors remembrance without despair. These pale, armored guardians first emerged from burial urns during the Bloodroot rites. Soul-bound through ash rituals, they channel the power of ancestral might. Though few, their presence is sacred. When they tread, even the birds fall silent. In peace now with Nytheris, they are granted years of tranquil honor, a rare reprieve for those forged in flame and agony. Their kaltar farms are stone-terraced groves warmed by geothermal vents, tucked between roots of ancient fossilized titans. There, beneath root light and chorus of root chant, the Urn Bear tend their crops. Ritual dances carved into the soil awaken the leaves at night, drawing forth potency in moonlight and memory. Each garden is more than field. It is a shrine of breath and flame. Their barter with Nytheris is discreet and ceremonial. In exchange for kaltar bundles and stone-forged relics, the Urn Bear receive pollen dyes, whisper silk bandages, and glad glass lanterns to light their ancestral halls. These trades are mediated by the Root Chosen, emissaries sworn to secrecy and bound to truth-sap oaths. Rumors tell of deeper exchanges too. Dreams for names, laughter for war chants, sorrow for soil memories. Though few, the Urn Bear are considered crucial to the realm's subtle balance. Their rituals infuse the forest's silence with gravity, and their smoke-filled chants are said to lull even restless Veilshades into momentary calm. Bioluminescent vines pulse with the rhythm of ancient, buried lifetimes, their soft glow dancing in tune with the breaths of forgotten spirits. They sway not with the wind, but with echoes of memory, Woven between them lie memory warp paths, twisted trails where time shifts like mist, where footsteps may echo before they fall, and travelers might emerge older in thought than in flesh. Sentient trees, their bark like carved obsidian and hearts drumming with arboreal judgment, absorb those who trespass, whispering their names once, then never again. Beneath their branches bloom giant mushrooms, towering as children, whose dream spores drift on unseen currents, gifting visions of lives unremembered and futures yet unborn. Each breath taken here tastes of lore, decay, and the hush of unmade fates. Conflict and legacy. Nytheris remembers Atlas, the storm beast, as a curse carved into its soil and soul. The land bears his passage like festering wounds, lightning-scored glades where nothing grows but whispering ash, twisted trees with blackened marrow that weep amber ichor, and meadows warped into thunder-cracked chasms. The sky still trembles with echoes of his roar, and storms veer off course, as if fearing to follow his wake. The kin remember him not merely in story, but in the ache of barometric dread that grips their bones when the wind howls low. His tempest burned the memory paths into chaos, sundered sacred groves into cyclonic voids, and left behind scars that sing with static during the solstice moon. Even now, the scent of ozone and scorched moss can drop fey warriors to their knees, not in pain, but in reverent terror. Atlas is not just a myth. He is a sensory curse. One such tale tells of the warrior, Erelith, a thornbound oathblade, who entered a scarred glade to recover a sap idol left behind during the storm reckoning. The air throbbed with phantom thunder, and each step cracked open old screams in her mind. Not hers, but those of the grove itself. Her veins sang with static, her vision swam with images of the past and future, shattered and bleeding into one another. She stumbled out 3 days later, her hair gone white, eyes forever flickering with lightning-etched memories. Now she roams the border woods, revered and avoided, whispering storm warnings in a voice not quite her own. Her presence is a living omen, proof that Atlas did not merely break the land, but carved living scars into those who dare remember. She moved afar away, arrived with a past of the air's riving dough, with lightning and future screams. Those her air wrote developness. That still stalks the air, a blight sown into the weather of remembrance. And all who survive his fury carry his mark, a haunting in blood, bark, and dream. Shrines scorched by his wrath remain untouched out of fear. In Mage's storms laid, designed a good longer, a business. But Teka, his elder sister, is beloved. Born of the same cosmic fracture, shaped in starlight before their divergence into storm and solace, she turned from the path of unmaking. Where Atlas carved scars into sky and soul, Teka sowed healing into wounded groves. She once wept with the forest kin, her tears coaxing blossoms from the ashes. It was her breath that stilled the death winds, her hands that closed the queen's final wound. Her presence is a balm older than language, a counterweight to her brother's ruin. Her return reawakens old allegiances and deeper mysteries. For where Atlas once broke the sky, Teka might yet mend the root. Among those lured by coin or curiosity into Nytheris' breathless green abyss are the Outlanders, mercenaries, scholars, and glory-starved cartographers tasked with mapping the unmappable. One such figure, Captain Everic Malro, once lauded as the Iron Lantern of the Bleakfire Siege, led a cadre of 12 elite scouts into the Hollow Shade. A decade later, he staggered out, barefoot and unblemished by time, his pupils flooded with golden pollen, uttering only riddles in cadences last heard in extinct empires. He now wanders the Vale Grove edges, shadowed by Veilshades that encircle him like mournful moons. Some claim his blood hums with the root speech of the forest. Voss, a cartomancer under Royal Skyrealm Commission, was said to be one of the most precise navigators alive, until the forest sang to him. His team fell silent beneath bloom-snarled roots that fed on memory and marrow. Voss returned alone, clothes stitched with veins of moss, eyes glazed with unblinking sorrow. His final act was to carve a map into glade glass with blood ink and fire sap, depicting an inverted forest where gravity fell inward and paths led only to forgotten names. He dove into a mirror lake soon after, swallowed whole by stillness. Caris Vey, the Ghost Finder. Known for surviving the Maw of Myrrh and harvesting soul stone from screaming vaults, entered Nytheris in search of the Thorn Oracle. She now haunts the Starbow Cradle during eclipses. Wrapped in living petals, her voice a dissonant choir of lament and prophecy. It is said she dies anew each night beneath a dream bloom that blossoms only from her regret. Each death another verse etched upon her flesh by unseen thorns. They are not merely lost. They are transformed, rewritten, and re-uttered by the forest. Their names are now whispered as half-prayers by chroniclers and warlocks alike. For within their unraveling lies not just horror, but paths the forest dares others to tread. Captain Everic Malraux now haunts the threshold of Valegrove Reach, a spectral wretch, shepherded by a procession of Veilshades, whose presence is neither sanctuary nor threat. His speech unspools in cryptic botanical riddles, phloem proverbs and chlorophyll chants, each phrase steeped in the soil wisdom of no discernible origin. In moments of eerie lucidity, he scratches battle plans into bark with his fingernails, campaigns against armies history never birthed, in territories cartographers dare not dream. Those who dare observe him swear the air grows heavier with ancestral breath when he murmurs, as if the forest holds its breath to listen. Some scholars believe his mind was sheared into root filaments by the hollow shade's temporal contagions. Others argue that Malraux no longer speaks for himself at all, but has become the wandering tongue of the forest's sentient grief, an emissary of bark-born memory and fungal lament. Thandril Voss's final map, recovered by a root-born scavenger, depicts an inverted forest. Paths walk the sky, glades bleed time, and names of stars are carved into the bones of trees. His map has since been deemed cursed. 3 cartomancers who studied it fell into fugue states, muttering coordinates to places that cannot exist. Caris Vey, believed lost, now appears on certain eclipses near the Starbow Cradle, her body wrapped in living petals, her voice a harmony of lament and revelation. She guides the desperate toward truths they may not survive. Her followers believe she has become a vessel for Nytheris' grief, a priestess of recursion and pain. Their names are etched in bark and bone throughout the hollow shade, unbidden, unnatural, not warnings, but invitations. The forest remembers, and through them it speaks. Their echoes still drift among the vines, guides, warnings, and perhaps invitations. Now, whispers of civil strife rise as ancient oaths fray. The Thornbound grow restless, the Dayglow seek ascension, and the Skyguard's silence deepens. Some believe the forest itself waits for a champion, for a trespasser, or for the storm to return. Thanks for venturing into the storm with me. Every tale in this universe, from the shattered kingdoms to the cursed bloodlines, I write myself. All the art, all the visuals, every drop of atmosphere you feel, that's shaped by hand and pieced together with my passion to create. These stories take a lot of time to make real, so thank you for your patience when the drops take longer than I'd like. If you felt something during this journey, if you got goosebumps, held your breath, or just needed a break from the noise of the real world, do me a solid. Like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with a nerdy friend who needs to touch grass. Or get scorched by Atlas's lightning. Your support keeps this storm alive.